you're tired of basic beginner watercolor drills and ready for a real challenge, this exercise is for you. It's going to push you, but if you can stick to it and persist, the payoff will be huge. Hi, I'm Françoise. Welcome back to my channel, the place to level up your painting skills and make your art stand out. What keeps people stuck when they start watercolor? Most times it's juggling with water and paint. It's frustrating and discouraging. But if you want to level up fast, you have to take the bull by the horns and solve this once and for all. I've been through this myself when I went from this to that in a few months of painting 3 to 4 times a week, and I was mainly practicing with skies and galaxies to improve. But the exercise I'm going to show you goes deeper than that. We'll work from reference and you'll gain mastery in observation, brush movement, water to paint ratios, overall painting efficiency with your ability to quickly go back and forth between paint and paper, and also creating the perfect contrast to make your paintings pop. And to get the best results, you'll need the right supplies and an interesting subject to work on. And actually painting velvet is going to help us achieve several goals in one shot. First is just one main color and no sketch, which means less hassle in general. Our focus can be on all the other skills I previously mentioned. References are super easy to find on free stock photo websites, and I recommend to crop them to focus on less when you first start practicing my exercise, and keep tweaking that as you start feeling more and more comfortable. And as you likely already know, paper is crucial when it comes to leveling up. I highly recommend 100% cotton cold press paper at 300 grams per square meter, and ash is a great choice because it will allow you to work on wet for a long time without the paper drying too fast. I suggest you use masking tape unless, like me, you work directly on the block that is glued on all 4 sides. Next, you only need 2 colors, whatever velvet photo you pick, one that matches the main tone for your art and one for shadows. Water jars, paper towels, and a selection of brushes are also important. I recommend a combination of flat, round, and pointed round brushes. Natural hair or synthetic brushes that mimic natural hair will be better than stiff synthetic brushes for this exercise. And by the way, if you want to see this exercise in real time with my voiceover, it's available on my Patreon for a small monthly fee, along with many other watercolor and watercolor pencil tutorials. And I will link that in the description below in case you want to check it out. We're going to start with a base layer on wet, and that is what most people would do when they start painting something like a landscape or anything that has a background. And it's best to prepare our colors, and I like to add just enough water that they're creamy, not too thick nor too watery. It still needs to be pigmented enough to show, but I don't want it too strong just yet. I'm wetting my paper thoroughly before applying that. We're going to work on wet for a while to master water control, and that starts with good paper and wetting it inside and out, not just quickly on the surface. That is a common mistake that you want to avoid. I rely on curvy strokes to begin setting up the pattern of the folds, and right now I'm not worried about leaving precise highlights. I'm just laying down the foundation. Remember to do a lot of back and forth between the sheet and your photo. This can be stressful at first, that's why I recommend starting on the cropped area of this. It will be much easier for you. As I work, I gradually increase the amount of pigment in my pink to refine the shapes. Since the paper is drying even when we can't see it yet, I know that I need to adjust my paint consistency. I need to make it slightly thicker with more paint to match the humidity of the paper. This is something you're going to become excellent at out of habit, and this exercise is all about helping you with that. And at this point, I notice a bloom forming because I probably had too much water on my brush at some point compared to what was on the sheet. So instead of panicking, I know that I can fix it by simply adding slightly thicker paints in that area. This shows how easy it is to fix mistakes, even when many people tell you it's not possible. When you know what you're doing because you've practiced it repeatedly with that kind of exercise, it is. If at any time in the process you're starting to feel panicky and stressed, you have the option to stop completely, always. All you need to do is dry the sheet and then you can wet it again and pick up where you left off. And again, I'll insist that this is going to be easier to do when you use cotton papers because they absorb so much more water. They can take many layers. I know I'm still good at that point, so I introduced a bit of indigo for soft shadows and I changed to a more precise pointed round brush to define the darkest creases. Working on wet paper for this long can feel intimidating, but this is exactly the kind of challenge that helps you improve. Think of it like your first driving lesson. It was stressful at first, but you didn't have a choice and now you don't even think about it anymore. This first layer will teach you to control water, adjust paint consistency, fix blooms or other stains, and refine your observation skills by spotting main curves and shadows. You'll also get used to working wet on wet for longer, which is a huge leap forward in watercolor. This is going to free you from so much overthinking and stressing about stuff, and you're going to be able to focus on other things afterwards once you master this. Now I can see that I've gone a bit too far, my paper is too dry, and this is a good place to stop. We can always re-wet the surface anytime, like I said, after drying it, and keep going. Notice that my shadows are looking too harsh. There is not enough transition between the pinks and dark purples. The painting is looking pale as well. But that's okay because first of all, this was just the base layer and this exercise is all about pushing the limits and learning to fix mistakes and see how far we can go. And with the second layer, we're going to work on balancing colors and contrast in a painting, which would also apply to any other subject, not just this velvet painting. Now a little trick. Watch what happens when I apply a second layer of water over the entire painting. Everything softens instantly. This is powerful for patchy paintings or anything like velvet or a sky or the sea, anything that needs to look soft. Some of the paint lifts slightly, but that's okay because I'm not scrubbing back and forth. I'm letting the water do the work. I reinforce my pink tones to help the deep shadows melt into the painting better. And again, I adjust my paint ratios since we want to up the color intensity from now on. We also already have a base, so there's no need to be as light as before. And as the paper dries, as always, I increase the pigment level to keep everything balanced. Now I start lifting paint to bring out the highlights. The goal is to enhance the definition of the folds through a play between light and dark. The initial layer quickly set up the shapes. It would be the case in any painting, any subject. And now, like we would for a landscape or anything else, we're refining those shapes, creating soft transitions and even more realism, little by little. We're only working with 2 colors here, but you can see this is also a good time to add vibrancy to a painting with more pigment on paper. This stage is about balance, connecting midtones, refining contrast, and for this particular piece here, making the fabric feel velvety and smooth through layering and working on wet still. But then I noticed the paper is drying too fast again, and I just want to point this out because notice how this happens to everyone. Nobody's immune to this even when you have years of painting experience behind you. I see that I can't lift anymore without making a mess, and I know that is no problem. Instead of trying to re-wet everything again with clear water, I just glaze a thin layer of pink over everything. And I don't use this trick all the time, only when I need to add even more vibrancy quickly. And as a bonus, the fact that the sheet is wet again lets me work back into the highlights. So with this simple technique, I just achieved 2 goals. So now you see how all of these techniques that I'm showing you can help you navigate working on wet like a pro, whatever you're painting, fix mistakes, and improve on something that didn't look good or satisfying with the first layer. This second layer was all about balance, how to integrate shadows seamlessly through layering and balancing color, and also get to practice powerful techniques like lifting or glazing water or color over a dry coat of paint, which are all essential for creating depth and softness. Now that everything is dry, it is time for final details. Working on dry paper will allow you to refine realism if you want to, and also practice wet on dry techniques. And that is an optional step because the background is already looking very beautiful. We don't have to add detail. It's up to you. And I mix a deep pink by adding a bit of indigo to my pink base. With this, I outline the deepest creases. Then I soften the edges on my strokes with a damp brush to keep the velvet looking soft. And once that dries, I glaze another layer of pink over everything, only because I decided I needed more vibrancy. This final unifying layer makes all the elements belong together visually as well. Again, how powerful glazing is. It's bringing the painting to life also thanks to more color. For the final highlights, I switch techniques. Instead of just lifting with a brush, I wet the area and I press a paper towel onto it. This subtle lifting method adds natural and realistic highlights without harsh edges. This is going to sharpen your skills in wet on dry control, refining edges, glazing, and lifting. And the best part is you see how adaptable watercolor is, especially when we practice with a subject like this one. Even if things didn't go perfectly along the way, even if my shadows were too strong in the base, even if at times the paper dried too fast before I was even done, I was able to make use of a bunch of useful techniques to fix and refine the painting. So remember, you can repeat this exercise for practice, not perfection, over and over to learn more each time and tailor it to your current skill level. So please let me know in the comments how you've enjoyed this and if you're going to try it out. And if you want to see more in-depth tutorials, you can find them on my Patreon or my courses that are linked below in the description. Thank you for watching and see you next time.